I'm not a model fan. I think models make you lazy. I think you could use it as part of your system there, but you have got to get boots on the ground and get out there and look at things because you're never going to model disease. You're never going to model the amount of lodging and green snap and things like that.
Welcome back to the Corn on the Seed podcast. This is Juan, and we are bringing you a late summer update on how the crop's progressing. Joining me is Craig Alleman here today. He has been on the road, scouting and visiting all of our observation plots. We have lots of third-party studies along with some internal plots, and I wanted to have this phone call with him so that we can get an update across what he has been seeing and even give us a little sneak peek as to something that we've got coming down the pipeline for this coming sale season. So, Craig, welcome. How you doing?
Not too bad. On my way home briefly for a couple hours this afternoon and the evening, and getting ready to head up to the office tomorrow. But zig away across the eastern half of Iowa for the first part of this week.
So you started in West Central Illinois and worked your way up across Iowa. Now you've also, did you get across to Wisconsin as well?
No, I started Monday. We have a whole bunch of third-party testing plots for corn and beans, but I was focused on the corn this week. We have those put in across our footprint, mostly Iowa, northern Illinois, and some into Wisconsin. And this will be where we have our existing hybrids in there, brand new hybrids that we just produced this year, and then experimentals that we're looking at to potentially produce in the future. It's a way to get them head to head and be able to take notes on them, whether that be disease or today standability and green snap in one of the plots I was in, just to get comfortable with them and to help make those decisions on possible new ones. So I started out Monday at Lone Tree, Iowa, and a lot of disease there for one thing. So we knew we've been talking about that for a while. It's looking to me like both sides of the river, Illinois, Iowa, both sides of the Mississippi, are going to be pretty heavy as you get out away from there. Not as much. Boy, if you're in that eastern Iowa, western Illinois, there's potentially some severe heavy disease out. So there are Lone Tree, common rust, which we talked a lot about. Tar spot is able to take a rating on, gray leaf spot, and then some northern corn leaf blight. But that was older northern corn leaf blight would have set in probably in June, but that could be ramping back up as soon as it cools down here in August and start cycling again. And then made my way out to Altoona there by Des Moines. Yesterday, James and I were out there for a technical update for Proven 40, and really it's going to be Proven G3. They're coming out with a Gen 3 product. It's basically the same two bios in there that are producing nitrogen, but they're sticking a couple of other biologicals in there, more focused on root growth. The more root growth, the more area that their two nitrification products can produce more nitrogen there for the plant. So it looks pretty exciting. We've been doing some testing of that, and likely that will be the product we'll be applying to seed next year for the customers that so choose.
Neat. I know we wanted to get this update to get a lay of the land. Right now is the time where the USDA and other market folks are looking at satellite images, but I think everybody knows you can't beat boots on the ground. So, but yeah. While we have now, just because I'm curious, is that's still going to be the 40 pounds? Is just going to be an additional microbe to help with the roots?
Yeah, the rate replacement recommendation won't change. So, some people just replace 40 pounds of nitrogen. Others are, maybe pulling out 20 or 30, depending on what they're trying to do, and add to it. But, I think most of our customers have just pulled 40 out and used the Proven 40 as the replacement. So that won't change anything. And yeah, you kind of mentioned, I guess, crop progress and things like that. I did see that. I think the first of the private yield groups were out with an estimate. They're You're estimating very high, and I understand that because we've had really good conditions, and most of those models are plugged in with temperature and moisture and things like that. We talked about the tassel wrap earlier. I don't think that probably is going to affect yield enough to affect the markets, but their models do not plug in this disease. And I do know that we spray a lot. There's a lot of people, and we've sure wrecked a fungicide on your corn, but there's probably a fair amount of people that have not done that. And I think the disease could get bad enough in pretty decent sized geographies where if you don't have a fungicide on, we could see the corn get shut down before it, hits black layer. And that's always a huge yield loss, sometimes between 20 and 60 bushel. That's not unheard of. So I do think that's going to maybe play in and something that they won't get calculated into their models.
Well, that's unfortunate. And that's a good point. Understandably so too. But we joke a lot about this, whether it's weather folk or anybody doing kind of predicting. Right, it's a tough job, and I know it's one that I would not want to be in. It's this perfect example right here. We're talking about disease that moves in quick too. I remember you sent out a season update internally to the team, and you've been mentioned about seeing that rust moving up here earlier than before. Am I remembering right?
Yeah, if a disease that moves up, not in our area like the rust, they come out of the south, so come out of Texas, Louisiana, things like that. They have to come up in storms, originate in the Gulf, and if they come up this time of the year, you might only get another cycle of them through. But if they come up in mid-June, which I think they probably did, then that disease could cycle several times before the crop's finished. That's when we really get in trouble. So we did see it come up earlier than normal in a pretty widespread area across Iowa and into Illinois, in our footprint. So yeah, that was definitely a concern.
You've trained us well here, and you've kept folks on alert that tar spot historically by itself, you hadn't seen it be very yield limiting, but coupled with something else, it can be nasty. I know a lot of the stuff that I've just kind of been looking at, taking a peek in it. It seems to be a petri dish of things. Now, a lot of that's on the ends of the fields. But what I guess my point being is, you've covered a big swath of Iowa, and your timing couldn't be more perfect because this is following obviously there were some recent storms, some big ones too, right? So you'd have great chance to look at that green snap and then how these diseases have been progressing. What is alarming you the most that I don't want to say would keep a guy up at night, but what's something that would be tippy top of your radar that from what you've seen right now?
Well, I'd say an update on the tar, because tar will set in early, but the hot weather puts it in check until it starts cooling off in August, and that's when it really ramps up. Same thing with northern corn leaf blight. I do think in those heavy areas, so both on the east, western Illinois, eastern Iowa, I think the tar had moved in a little bit earlier in a little bit bigger quantity than I thought. A good fungicide, at R1 would have put that in check and should hold it off now. But it did surprise me how much was out there when I looked a couple weeks ago, after we got the fungicide on. Now, after our Altoona meeting yesterday evening, I went up to Ogden, Iowa. So we're 10, 15 miles west of Ames and did went through another plot, our internal stuff where we're testing experimentals with our normal focus products. And really the only thing I saw there was a little bit of southern rust, and it was much smaller quantities, very minimal amounts of gray, and every once in a while just a touch of tar and maybe a little northern. But those amounts were pretty light. So that's what I'm saying. As you get further away from the Mississippi, it looks like there could always be heavier pockets. Looks like a lot better on the disease side. And then here this morning on my way back, I went to Center Point, Iowa, which ironically is not the center point of Iowa, in case you're wondering. But so, over near the Cedar Rapids area. And the only thing I really saw enough to rate again was the southern rust. So the southern rust kind of the, I guess, the most prominent disease. And to me, it's the most yield robbing if it really gets up and gets heavy before the end of the season. But I was able to take a rating on that. Every now and again, a little bit of tar, every now and again, a little bit of gray, and a little bit of northern. Now that area there, I did see some pretty significant wind damage. So that would have been that what was supposed to be this year's derecho that started up there in northwest Iowa.
Yep.
And we did see, on the, I think you sent me a map where it was heaviest, and it would have been one of those heavier areas. Did not, it did not end up being a derecho where it was widespread and so forth, which was a blessing. But I was able to take, late green snap scores, and I would call them root lodging scores. It'd be the plant would have lodged over before the brace roots that are, above ground would have had a chance to anchor in. And so, that most of those plants have stood back up to different degrees by now. But those things are, you think frustrating, but for a plot, a research plot that I was taking notes on, you can get some great notes there. So we always like to see that it gives a separation, in hybrids is what we call that. And so we can really get some good scores on that, and maybe weed out some experimental hybrids that we may have been thinking about bringing in, but now would hesitate. They have standability issues. So anyway, that's where I ended my day.
Sounds like, from what you've seen, well, first, before I move away from the green snap root lodging, the areas that you saw, and even, we have a lot of customers going across there, and where you're driving back. How do you feel? And I even hate asking this because, I critique people that observe from the highway and want to rate a crop as good to excellent. But I feel like from the highway, you could get an idea of corn that's down that's not getting back up, which could point to maybe that rootworm situation. How do you think, if you could assess from your trip, what corn rootworm control is looking like this year from what you saw, or customers or plots that you've seen? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that kind of just a couple of thoughts on the models that to use, whether it's weather forecasting or yields and everything. I'm not a model fan. I think models make you lazy. I think you could use it as part of your system there, but you have got to get boots on the ground and get out there and look at things, because you're never going to model disease. You're never going to model the amount of lodging and green snap and things like that. Those are just things that you're not going to see, and you really got to get out there and get a handle. But yes, especially when you have a wind event, as I got into those areas, you start seeing that mottled look out there in corn. It's always easy out in Iowa because most everywhere has hills to some degree. Here in Illinois, when you get into the flat areas, you can't always see out there over the top of the corn. But you get that mottled look, so you have lodging out in there. That's what that tells you. Oh, on a normal year, 9 times out of 10, you've got a rootworm issue out there, and that's what's caused that to lodge. Now, the one thing I would say with the rootworm is if you did not get that storm at the right time with the rootworm this year, the feeding was very heavy. So I think, we're recommending at least a couple of control mechanisms. And I think the complaints that I've actually walked probably have not had two methods of control for the most part. So, we get fewer and fewer of that every year, just because I think we're recommending a solid program. But the regeneration on the roots this year was just excellent with rootworm feeding. So not only the roots that the rootworms fed on, they definitely regenerated, with smaller root hairs, got down into that soil and anchored really well. But then, if you had time to get that set or two of brace roots that are like right at the ground level or the next one up, most of those didn't establish till after the larvae were done feeding and out of there. And we had good moist conditions because all the rain we had this year. So the roots were able to just get right in the ground and grow down and anchor itself. So I think there's probably some rootworm feeding out there that we don't even see because we don't maybe have the lodging like we normally would, which is great for the customer for sure.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I know here recently, Carrie Ann and our team was kind of putting something together to, educate folks on our 6 modes of action to address the the corn rootworm challenge. So I encourage folks to go to our website. You kind of go in there and see how we are approaching it, whether it's from a biological standpoint or from a trait package or something else. But okay, well, thank you on that. I was wondering about that, and then the one thing you mentioned earlier, Southern Rust was what you had seen the most. So I kind of wanted to then turn it into a takeaway for folks right now. I realize crop is a variety of stages right now, but for the most part, are we past the point where it's too late to spray?
And I've had that question a lot. If it's a question of you spray and you prevent that corn plant from shutting down prematurely, so in other words, before it has a chance to put all the weight that it possibly can into the kernels, and before it hits black layer, you're going to lose a ton of yield, okay? Because you're not going to have the weight in those kernels, and we get paid off of weight. So it's not too late. I mean, I think you've got till at least the middle of August, depending on when you plant it and things like that. If not the third week in August, to get a fungicide on and still get a yield benefit under very heavy, disease pressure. And you don't need to have the expensive, long residual fungicide now that we recommend our one stage. If you're putting it on at the middle of August, all you really are wanting to do is put it in check and kill what's there now. In a couple of weeks of residual would be more than enough. So you can save a few dollars there, and that'll help as well. But it is definitely not too late. We've got at least another, I'm going to say 1 to 3 weeks that we could do some good if we get out there and we see we have a real heavy infestation. And don't forget tar. Tar its days are yet to come here. I mean, tar's just going to get cranking here as it starts cooling down. So
okay, so
we couple that with some southern rust, and I'm here to tell you that is a bad day.
So with that being said, because you hit that on the tar spot, and as you were talking, I was looking at the predicted forecast the next 10 days in my area right now, which is Jackson County, Iowa. So it might not be the same for everybody listening, but it helps for this context. Next 10 days, we're looking at lows in the high 60s and highs in the, I would say average mid 85 to high 80s a couple nights. 60% chance of rain through each of those. So with that being said, looks like some cooler evenings and still warmth there. Does that support the southern rust? I guess a better way to phrase my question is, if someone's scouting today and they go out there and they say, oh, here's a little bit, it's not bad, what conditions would be favorable for it to push it to get aggressive quick?
Well, southern rust likes heat. So I think we do have another heat stretch coming up here. So it's going to like that. It may cycle again. Tar, on the other hand, likes cool conditions. But as we start having these cool evenings, all these fungal diseases need moisture. And that could be rain. That could be a dew, anything like that.
All righty. No, well, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I think you're getting to that spot where it's starting to get a little choppy, but really the long and short of that there, if I caught that there was say that last sentence one more time if you will. It cut out right when you closed it.
This is going to be tar weather coming up when we start cooling down in the evenings and we get those heavy dews. That's when it'll be cranking. So if your plant's clean because you sprayed that long residual fungicide, you don't have anything to worry about. The tar can move in. You're not going to be hurt. But if you got a mess out there already and the tar comes in, that's going to be a problem.
Fantastic. That was perfect. So, well, I think we hit that pretty good, Craig. It sounds like it's excited that we're going to be able to offer customers that third generation of that product through Pivot Bio. So more info to come on that. And then really you're seeing southern the most out of everything, but you are seeing more disease. For the most part, it seems like the tassel wrap issue that has begotten all of social media has come out from what we've seen. Okay. And I realize every situation is different because you can see things that fill out good and then we can see other spots that not so much. So I don't want to belittle or undermine that for anyone that's dealing with it. But we're optimistic that we're weathering that okay. But really, the big Craig alert, if there was one right now, is disease pressure, and keep an eye on it. And it is not too late to spray. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we hit before we wrap up, or we lose you on the phone?
No, I think we beat that horse pretty good. I'm pretty sure it's been dead for a little while, but
I tell you what, I sure hope
that's it for now.
I sure hope that they get us a new section of horses out here, because we sure don't hold back, that's for sure. Folks, that's all we have. You can see a lot of informational agronomic info on our website, or check us out on any of the social medias. Just look us up, Cornelius Seed, or our tagline, Planet Profit. Until the next one.